Will be led by the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Womack.
Would all rise, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair will entertain up to 5 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Gentlemen, without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in recognition of drug courts and veterans treatment courts in America. No one disputes the issues of rampant drug abuse and abuse in our nation and the tremendous hardship it's placing on families, on businesses, and our criminal justice system. Recently, I met a remarkable young man from Arkansas who epitomizes the critical need to expand these life-saving programs. Blaine was facing 20 years in prison because of a 10-year addiction to opioid prescription drugs that spiraled out of control while experimenting in college. Today, he's a father to 3 beautiful children, owns his own home, and is giving back to his community, all because a drug court in Arkansas saved him. This month is National Drug Court Month. Drug courts represent one of our nation's most successful strategies for intervention. I support drug courts and veterans treatment courts. I'm counting on my colleagues to ensure they are properly supported and funded. The return on investment is incalculable. And I yield back my time.
Gentleman for what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition? Oh. I was looking for him over here. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to introduce the Direct Connect to Success Act. In my district and across the state of Florida, hundreds of thousands of striving students start in community colleges and automatically get admitted into our 4-year universities if they graduate with a minimum of a 2.0. A 4-year degree opens up even more opportunities for these students, many of whom come from underserved and rural areas. This has been a nationally recognized program that is only available in a few states. But by expanding this simple, proven program nationwide, we'll extend the opportunity to continue higher education to millions more hardworking, deserving students. We all agree that government has a role to play in reducing barriers to success, and this guaranteed admission is a low-cost, highly efficient way to remove this big barrier. I ask you and others to join me in support the Direct Connect to Success Act to create more opportunities to pursue the American dream for all students. And I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, every day law enforcement officers across America put their lives on the line to protect our communities and our fellow citizens. National Police Week is an opportunity for all Americans to recognize and express our deep appreciation for those law enforcement officers and first responders for their selfless service. I want to take a moment to honor those who have lost their lives in the line of duty. In Harris County, Texas, we recognize and remember the lives of Chief Clint Greenwood and Deputy Darren Goforth, who worked tirelessly to keep Houston safe. Both of these men served their communities and families honorably, and we're so grateful for their sacrifice. As chairman of the Commerce, Justice, Science, Appropriations Subcommittee, it is and will continue to be one of my top priorities to ensure that our law enforcement officers have the resources they need to protect our communities and to protect themselves. We must always honor and protect those who protect us. I express a deep thanks to the people of Texas and America, to all our uniformed officers for their dedicated service to our nation.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Missouri seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise in praise of a good Missourian and a good friend who has done a great deal to honor our men and women in uniform. For 18 years, Bud Simmons has hosted a Troop Hero Appreciation Day at his Pier 31 Marina and Restaurant on Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri, where he treats military families to a delicious meal, boat rides on the lake, numerous prizes, and a day together as a family away from the stresses of military life. If you ask Bud why he does it, he'll tell you that freedom is not free and that he wants to honor our heroes who are pledging their lives to protect ours. He remembers how many troops returning from Vietnam were never thanked for their sacrifices, and he doesn't want that mistake repeated. This year's event on Saturday, June 10th, is the last time that Bud will host this event. I want to thank Bud for his efforts to honor those who serve. He has made a difference in countless lives of servicemen, women, and their families, and we are all grateful for his example, his leadership, and his patriotism. God bless you, Bud. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi seek recognition? Michigan, excuse me.
For 1 minute.
Without objection. Okay, what's in it?
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to thank Michigan's police officers for their selfless service and to honor the fallen. Isaiah 6:8 says, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And I said, "Here I am, send me." Every time our law enforcement officers put on their uniform, they are saying, "Send me." In cities and small towns all over the United States, law enforcement officers act as our protectors, defenders, and ambassadors of peace. They hold that thin blue line between thriving, healthy communities and chaos. During the past few months, I've had the pleasure of getting to know officers serving the Escanaba, Gaylord, and Traverse City communities in specific, and all across the 1st District. And I can say without pause that Michiganders are in capable and caring hands. We owe a debt of gratitude, a debt of cooperation, and a debt of consistent support to our law enforcement officers. God rest the souls of the fallen. Keep their friends, families, and fellow officers in your hearts and prayers. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte, seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 324, I call up H.R. 1039 and ask for its immediate consideration.
Clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 66, H.R. 1039, a bill to amend Section 3606 of Title 18, United States Code, to grant probation officers authority to arrest hostile third parties who obstruct or impede a probation officer in the performance of official duties.
Pursuant to House Resolution 324, the bill is considered read. After 1 hour of debate on the bill, it shall be in order to consider the amendment printed in House Report 115-127, if offered by the member designated in the report, which shall be considered read, shall be separately debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, and shall not be subject to demand for division of the question. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte, and the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on H.R. 1039.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the question of adopting the amendment to H.R. 1039 may be subject to postponement as though under Clause 8, Rule 20.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Before I address the bill under consideration today, I'd like to take a few minutes to honor a very special member of my staff, Barack Govinsolar, who lost his courageous battle with cancer this past weekend. Barack was a valued member of the Judiciary Committee team and worked on a variety of issues, including digital privacy and intellectual property. His vast knowledge and grasp of the issues impacting the technology community was a tremendous asset to the community. Most recently, Barack's work included the development of the committee's innovation and competitiveness agenda, and his steadfast work and tenacious attitude were not only essential in making this initiative a success, but were also a testament to his character. In fact, while he was undergoing intensive cancer treatments, he was actively working and sending follow-up emails from his hospital bed. And just days before Barack passed away, he met with FCC Commissioner Ajit Pai to discuss a number of Judiciary Committee priorities. For Barack, nothing could prevent him from an opportunity to discuss and advance the policies he was so passionate about. Barack was a true technology policy enthusiast. Prior to joining the staff of the Judiciary Committee, Barack served as a legislative advisor for Congressman Randy Forbes. While working for Congressman Forbes, Barack handled the diverse range of issues that fall under the jurisdiction of the Judiciary Committee, but it was always evident that technology policy was his first love. He co-founded the Congressional Tech Staff Association and served as an executive officer responsible for the Professional Development Program. Prior to his career on Capitol Hill, Barack worked at Tech America and CompTIA, focusing on international trade policy. Barack has many friends here in the halls of Congress on both sides of the aisle. I know all of you join me in extending our deepest sympathies to his mother, Phyllis, and his sister, Eileen Forbes, his girlfriend, Ashley Newsom, and all of his loved ones. Barack will be deeply missed. Mr. Speaker, now I rise in strong support of H.R. 1039, the Probation Officer Protection Act of 2017, and urge my colleagues to do the same. I want to thank the primary author of the bill, the gentleman from Washington, Congressman Reichert, for his leadership on this and many other law enforcement issues. Under current law, a federal probation officer may arrest a probationer or an offender on supervised release if the officer has probable cause to believe that the offender has violated a condition of his or her probation or release. The officer may make the arrest with or without a warrant. Unfortunately, current law does not grant probation officers arrest authority in situations where a third party attempts to physically obstruct an officer or inflict physical harm on the officer. Despite the fact that interfering with a probation officer in the performance of his or her official duties is in itself a crime, federal probation officers lack the authority to correct or restrain a physically interfering third party. In fact, a probation officer's only course of action is to retreat from the situation. This not only exposes these officers to a heightened risk of harm, as they are not permitted to subdue the assailant, it also allows the probationer to conceal evidence that he has violated terms of his probation or supervised release or any other criminal activity. H.R. 1039 is a reasonable and responsible remedy to this very real problem. This bill, which has the support of the Judicial Conference of the United States and the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, will protect probation officers and enhance their ability to do their job by giving them authority to arrest a third party who forcibly interferes with an officer's performance of his or her official duties. This bill would not give probation officers general arrest authority. Rather, as noted, it grants them the very limited authority to arrest a third party who is interfering with the duties of the officer, which is already a federal crime. I urge my colleagues to support this common sense measure to ensure that these dedicated men and women have the necessary authorities to undertake their duties safely and effectively. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentlelady from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to speak for such time as I might consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
First of all, to the chairman and to the Republican team, let me offer on behalf of the Democrats and Mr. Conyers our deepest sympathy for the loss of Barack, and to also acknowledge how important our staff is and how important we are as a family on the Judiciary Committee, staff, Republican and Democratic staff members working together around legislation that makes a difference in the lives of Americans. To hear the dedication, Barack, only warms our heart to recognize that we still live in the greatest country in the world because we have young people willing to serve and sacrifice on behalf of their nation. So I offer my deepest sympathy to you and to his family as well. I rise to discuss the underlying bill, and that is H.R. 1039, And again, as we finish police work, let me say to all of those in law enforcement, including our federal law enforcement, local, county, and state, a very large thank you for the work that you've done. In my work as a former judge in the city of Houston, I've seen their work up close and personal, and as well, I have had the opportunity on a number of cases where I've asked and interacted with them as they have proceeded their investigation to find the culprit or the perpetrator and to make the community safe. Federal probation officers perform a critical service in interacting with and managing their supervisees. They have a central role in seeking to achieve the important goals of supervision, which includes rehabilitating the defendant, safeguarding society from further criminal conduct by the defendant, and protecting the rights of victims. Although probation officers do have the ability to arrest a supervisee under certain circumscribed conditions, they should not take on the role of police officers. Rather, they should focus on their role of working in a constructive manner with supervisees to maximize the chances of adherence to the conditions of supervision. We certainly do not want probation officers to be threatened or assaulted while performing their duties, nor do we want anyone to obstruct the performance of those duties. In many instances, those probation officers can be assisted by backup officers or other federal officers in the line of their duty. That is why Congress enacted Section 111 of Title 18 of the United States Code, which prohibits such behavior. If violated, these crimes should be investigated, charges brought when appropriate, but also the probation officer can seek assistance. In fact, probation officers have long relied on law enforcement officers to provide support during searches, and I believe that is still the best course. Section 111, however, itself presents serious issues about the vagueness of some of its terms that define violations such as interferes or opposes. May I remind my colleagues that we have a First Amendment. We have the right of freedom of speech and freedom of access, freedom of movement. This exacerbates my concerns about allowing probation officers to arrest individuals whom they're not supervising for violations of this section. Indeed, we are told by proponents of the bill that federal probation officers plan to use lesser included authority to detain violators instead of bringing them in for charges after an arrest. At a time when we need to do more to de-escalate circumstances involving confrontations between law enforcement and citizens, I'm concerned that establishing this authority will only lead to more confrontation. In concluding, as I indicated, the bill would authorize federal probation officers to arrest without a warrant an individual other than a supervisee if there is probable cause to believe that person assaulted or interfered with a probation officer in the course of their duties. I believe there are conflicting constitutional issues here, and I ask my colleagues, with all due respect, to oppose the legislation. I reserve my time.